Earlier I spoke to my political panel for today. It's been the first question time of the week, the second week the Parliament's sitting for the 48th Parliament. Liberal Senator Dave Sharma, who's a former Australian ambassador to Israel and the Shadow Assistant Minister for Competition, Charities and Treasury, and Alicia Payne is the Labor MP for Canberra. Dave Sharma, Alicia Payne, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good afternoon, Patricia.
There's some news out this afternoon. The Israeli embassy in Australia has declared there is no starvation in Gaza. That's despite calls by world leaders, including, of course, our own Prime Minister, for more aid to be delivered and a condemnation of Israel's actions. Alicia, I'll start with you. There appears, at least from the embassy here in Australia, to still be a contesting of this. Do you think Australia has gone far enough in its condemnation of Israel?
Well, I really welcome the Prime Minister's comments yesterday to say that it's clear that Israel is in breach of international law. And this week in Parliament, we've met with aid workers who've become, such an important voice in a situation where journalists have limited access and talking about what they're seeing, and they absolutely are saying that Palestinians are being starved at the moment, including doctors who are working in the hospitals, and they've talked about hospitals under siege. They're talking about innocent children in horrific situations. So I was really pleased to see that, and I do think that we should be pulling out every diplomatic lever we have to stop this, and we have continually called for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, which is the most effective way to ensure that innocent lives are protected. And we've also continually called for aid to be allowed into Gaza, and clearly by not allowing that, Israel is breaching international law.
Dave, do you agree with the Prime Minister that it was a breach of international law for Israel to stop food being delivered?
Look, I don't believe Israel has stopped food from being delivered, or at least my understanding is that hasn't been the policy intent. But undoubtedly, the level of humanitarian hardship in Gaza has skyrocketed over the last few months, and I believe the reports we're hearing of hunger, food insecurity, malnutrition are credible, and I think we need to be acting in response to that.
So when the Israeli embassy in Australia declares that there is no starvation in Gaza, that's wrong, isn't it, Dave Sharma?
Well, I haven't seen exactly what they said, but I think the evidence is pretty overwhelming that there's a high, there's malnutrition, there's shortages of food. Now, who's to blame there and how much is Hamas commandeering supplies? People can have those sorts of arguments and discussions, but I don't think the civilian population of Gaza, should be held hostage, so to speak, because of those discussions. And I'm pleased that Israel has taken steps in the last 24 hours to withdraw military operations from some areas and to allow and assist food drops by air by neighbouring countries as well. I think that shows you that they recognise that this is a problem.
It's interesting, if I can just stay with you, I'll get back to you, Alicia, in a second, but Dave Sharma, you just say no one cares. And I think that's a really powerful point, actually, because for a child starving in Gaza, hearing from political leaders, it's Hamas's fault, must be pretty hard to hear for those people, that they hear that this is the way people are sort of explaining it. That's not going to wash, is it? If you are starving, you have to find a way to get food to these people, don't you?
Well, I mean, look, you and I are old enough to remember, the Live Aid concerts and famine in Ethiopia in the mid-1980s, and in part that was brought about by, a terrible totalitarian regime, the Mengistu regime, but no one thought that the Ethiopian population should starve because of the actions of their government. And look, the people of Gaza, yes, some might support Hamas, I'm sure many do not, but they don't have the capacity at least to change that situation, and they need to be fed. They need to have access to food and water and healthcare as well.
And Alicia, I want to bring you in. There is still many, clearly in the Israeli government, contesting some of this, the Israeli embassy here. You said, I wrote it down, that all diplomatic levers should be used. What other diplomatic levers? Should the Israeli ambassador be hauled into Penny Wong or the Prime Minister's office to talk about this?
Well, I think it's important, our government's view on that has been that it's been important to keep those channels of communication open with the ambassador, and that can be important in times of conflict to keep those channels open. But as I said, I was really pleased to see the strengthening of language over the weekend. And I think, to say that the starvation is not happening, we can all see it in what we're seeing in the media. And as I mentioned, we've heard it directly from aid workers who've just come back from being on the ground in Gaza. So I think, also not seen exactly what they've just said in the last, very recently. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah,
so there are some experts, I know that you read very, very thoroughly on this issue, Dave Sharma, who say Israel should be flooding the zone, so to speak, like flooding Gaza with aid. Do you agree with that?
Look, I mean, that's a sort of question, I guess, it's a question ultimately for Israel. I mean, I would like to see... No, but you're
a friend. You historically, I think it's important, former ambassador for Australia to Israel, friend of Israel. I mean, good friends have to be pretty honest with their friends. They have lost international support because of this behaviour that the world has denounced. Don't they need to fix it?
Well, look, yeah, there is a very live internal debate within Israel, and there are critics of this policy from within security and defence and intelligence establishments and former prime ministers. Now, that they would say, or parts of the Israeli government would say, well, Hamas is using this as a sort of propaganda tool. But I think the way to stop that being used as a propaganda tool is to make sure that there is no food insecurity in Gaza, to make sure that the population is fed, to make sure that Hamas cannot use this to portray you as cruel or uncaring or insensitive. And I think Israel's international legitimacy does matter in this contest, and it matters, I think, to its relationship with Australia as well.
Alicia, bringing you back in, your colleague Ed Husick says that Palestinian statehood should happen following France, that Australia should call for it, not wait. Do you think that we need to accelerate that?
Well, I long to see that happen. I long to see us recognise a Palestinian state, and more importantly, when I speak with Palestinian people in my own community, they long for that recognition of their state. And this has been a position of Labor's for a very long time, and part of a plan for a two-state solution. And I was very encouraged when the Foreign Minister said that we no longer saw this as an end to a peace process, but something that could happen along the way. And we want to see that happen, as the Prime Minister has said, at a time that is most advantageous to peace. So I hope that that is as soon as possible.
OK, can I just drill down on this? Because I've spoken to other colleagues of yours off the record. I know lots of Labor MPs want this to happen at the September vote at the UN. Do you think that would be a good time to show your colours on this?
Well, I think that, yes, there are many people within Labor who have been, who really want to see this and are actively having those conversations. But we have said that it will happen at the time that is most advantageous for peace. And I think that is important as well. We want to do this at a time that will have the most impact, not to do something that may not actually help people in Gaza right now. OK, so just to get your personal position, do you think, would you like to see it happen in September? Well, as I've said, this is something I've been speaking about in Parliament since I was elected in 2019. It's something that's important to me, but more importantly, important to the Palestinian people, and something I hope to see happen as soon as possible. But I want to see... As soon as September? Well, what's most important is that we see peace reached in the Middle East, that we see the people of Palestine able to live freely in a recognised state, in peace and security, alongside the people of Israel in a state living in peace and security. And so we see that step as part of that process, and it's important that we take that step at the right time. Dave Sharma, just changing the topic, former Nationals leader Barnaby Joyce says his bill to get rid of net zero, essentially, is kind of key to dealing with prosperity, to dealing with all of the people who he says are struggling as a result of net zero. That's his case. At the same time, the WA Liberal Party has supported a motion over the weekend to abandon a target of net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Is the policy dead in your party?
No,
not at all.
Sounds like it's dead. I mean, there's some big, people coming out saying no.
Well, I think in some respects it's the usual suspects coming out and saying no, and they're people who've long been on the record. I mean, there is a variety of views within the Liberal Party and within the coalition more broadly on this issue, but we have a policy process to review all of our policies, and this one will be reviewed as well. But I think absolutely we should be scrutinising the transition to a lower emissions future and seeing if it's been done in the most optimal way, if it's got the social licence it needs to be operating in rural and remote areas, the speed and pace of the rollout, the technology agnosticism or otherwise of it. But I don't think it's in our interests, Australia's national interests, or indeed the Liberal Party's interests, to be, quarrelling with the destination, if you like, of a lower emissions future. I think the public in Australia has made up their mind on that. I think the world has made up their mind on that. Yes, we can have discussions about the speed and pace and direction of that journey, and the speed and pace and the pattern of that journey, if you like. But I think the destination is pretty clear, at least to me personally. OK, to you it's clear, but not to many of your colleagues. And you say the usual suspects. I mean, the WA Liberals, are they the usual suspects? Well, look, I mean, you do get state Liberal parties and branches pass motions on all sorts of things. The parliamentary wing of the party, just as you get at ALP state conferences as well, the parliamentary wing of the party is informed by those and cognizant of those, but it doesn't dictate or determine policy. I mean, I think, for many people, at least within, my side of politics, I think net zero has become it's attracting more attention and more internal debate than I think the public is interested in us having, is my blunt political assessment, and that's why I don't think it's particularly useful. Alicia, your party's obviously very much in favour of net zero, but do you think that the ambition around 2035, which is the next step that Labor has to take, show what your 2035 ambitions should be high, despite some lobbying for Labor to go slowly? Well, we've been very ambitious on climate action, and it's been one of the things I've been proudest of our achievements in the previous government, and continuing, in this parliament. And just this morning we had a discussion with Minister Chris Bowen and the Labor Environmental Action Network Climate Council on this topic. It's something I am sure we will be ambitious on, and it's something that needs to be considered very carefully, weighing what we can actually achieve, which is important, and of course what is required by the science, which is the most important thing that we should be aiming for at the moment. And just following on, I find it extraordinary that the coalition, or some in the coalition, are still questioning this, not after, of course, the immense body of science that says that we need to get to net zero, but, two election results that should make it very clear to all on their side of politics that the Australian people want action on climate change. All right, we're out of time. Thanks to both of you. Thanks so much, very much.